In Focus is powered in part by Delta Dental of Colorado, improving the oral health of the communities we serve. DeltaDentalCO.com.
Welcome to In Focus with Eden Lane.
This year's Colorado New Play Summit by the Denver Center Theater Company received strong attendance from the industry and the general public. Tonight we'll meet two of the playwrights whose work received some of the strongest responses. Later we'll meet Marcus Gardley, whose work recasts Homer's Odysseus as a black soldier returning from the Gulf War. But we begin with a playwright who was just added to the staff of the HBO series NEWSROOM. Matthew Lopez brought a rollicking play, The Legend of Georgia McBride. It follows a young Elvis impersonator who finds out he's about to become a father. The joyous, bawdy comedy has a good heart, even if it has a few controversial characters. We met with the charming young playwright immediately following his industry reading. So we just saw the first reading. Did you have another reading before this?
We had one yesterday.
You had one yesterday. So this was the industry reading for the commission you had for the Colorado New Play Summit.
Yes, it was actually a commission at the Old Globe where I was artist in residence last year. And so this was the culmination of the residency there. And the Colorado New Play Festival read it and invited me to come and do it here.
Had you heard of this festival before?
I actually hadn't, but that's just because I don't know anything. I just sit in my little room and I type, and then my agent calls and says, there's this thing that exists out west, and you should go do it. And I'm like, of course, then I will do that.
Well, having heard your play, I know that you do know a thing or two. So what's the connection with Florida?
I'm from there.
You're from Florida.
The play is set in my hometown of Panama City, Florida. My parents are from Brooklyn, but they ended up in Panama City, Florida. My dad says it's because they just ran out of gas. And
I love that.
I was born and raised there. And so I have this very strange connection to the South, which is where I was born and raised, but I was born and raised by people from Brooklyn. So I spent a lot of time in New York. So I'm a Southern boy who sounds like he's from New York.
A Southern boy who sounds like he's from New York. And you have a lot of that rhythm in your dialogue, right. That sort of New York transplant to Florida kind of thing. The dialogue was really quite brisk and brilliant and really spot on. So tell me, how do you know this world of drag queens?
When I was 17 years old is when I started to come out to my friends. And in my hometown, there was one gay bar. And it was
just
one. Since then, it has ballooned, and now there are three. But
oh wow!
Yeah, I know, it's a total industry now. But when I was a kid, there was one place, and it was downtown, and it felt very transgressive going into it the first time because I was, I was admitting something about myself, and I was going into this place that was only whispered about in my town. I mean, it was very.
Were you old enough to go?
No, but I went anyway. And it was it was like a very whispered about thing in town, and it was sort of like, you don't talk about that place. And of course I wanted to go. And so I had some friends who were older than me, and they took me, and it was where I saw my first drag show. And it was so exciting. I mean, I grew up in theater. I did community theater in Panama City, Florida, and my parents, they would take me to New York on trips to visit family, and we would see Broadway shows, and I instantly saw the theater of it. I just saw what in the play I refer to it as the smoke and the mirrors, and the makeup and the make-believe, but also the reality of it too, the commitment to the persona that is drag.
Right.
That as a dramatist, or I think at the time a budding dramatist, I just saw the theater in it, and I loved it. And so I kept going back every weekend, and when you're 17 and you're allowed entrance into a place that you're not really supposed to be, it's
magical.
Incredibly exciting.
Oh yes.
Yeah. So.
Well, you certainly captured the dialogue, the backstage dialogue that would be there, and you also really kind of captured a different humanity than is often presented theatrically about drag queens. So you must know some.
I did. Well, that was the thing, is when I began to befriend some of the girls, and I would hang out in the dressing room, and I would watch them get ready, and they loved me because I was this little boy, you know, and I was like,
you're so cute.
Thank you. But I did. I just sort of sat in the dressing room and I watched, these transformations, and I watched the bickering and the banter, and you know, it's funny. There's things in your life that you possess and then you forget about, and I went on with my life, and I, you know, did so many other things, and then when I sat down to write this play, I was amazed at how much I had retained and how much was there, and how I didn't realize how important it was to me as I think my education as a young gay man, you know, and then you grow up and you go on to live your life, and you become an adult, and you
It was your first tribe, in a way.
It absolutely was my first tribe, and you know, my first I felt unrequited love affair from afar was with a drag queen who was just upon which I think I based the character of Auburn Sienna, who is rumored to actually be a woman. She's so believable, and there was this I can't even remember her name, but I loved her as a woman, and then when she wasn't in drag, I loved him as a man, and I was so, and of course he wouldn't give me the time of day, and there was this mythic quality to, I think, that love that I had, and so in working on, and I have to say, even just answering this question, I'm amazed at how important it was to me, and I just channeled it into the play, lovingly, I hope, and just, you know, it was this. You know that scene on All That Jazz where Bob Fosse's alter ego is Joe Gideon is in the dressing room at the burlesque house, and you know, he's like observing and watching. I kind of feel that way about the drag shows and the drag queens that I saw when I was a kid, you know, growing up.
That's a brilliant reference too. You also touch on another sort of mythic quality about drag, is it's the urban legend of the straight man who's an excellent drag queen.
Right.
So how did that come to be your central storyline, your central romance in this?
Through very different, many degrees of separation, I happened to come into my possession a mixtape, well, I'm showing my age a bit, a playlist of
I still say records, that's okay.
And the name of the playlist was called Persona, and like I said, through several degrees of separation, a woman's boyfriend who was just a conceptual artist, decided that he was going to investigate and tackle drag for himself as an artist. And he came to it respecting the art and wanting to learn about the art. And I never met him, actually. It was just, again, so many degrees of separation. But I got my hands on this playlist that they had created for themselves. And it was all these Emmylou Harris, all these Loretta Lynn, Tammy Wynette, all of this stuff that I'd heard because I grew up in the Deep South, but I never put together in a compilation. And it was influenced by Elvis a little bit. There was a lot of covers of Elvis. There was a lot of songs about Elvis. And so I would listen to this playlist because it's just a fantastic playlist. And it was one day on the subway, I'm listening to it, and a play began to form in my mind of what would a straight drag queen look like, be like, feel like, what would that journey be like? And I knew instantly that it would be too easy to tell that particular story of someone who sought it out as a artistic medium. I wanted drag to save an unlikely candidate. You know, I wanted to put someone through hell and find the only way out was to do drag. And so I began to concoct the story that way and find a person who, and I think in the way that most straight people in Panama City, Florida, would probably view drag as a come down, as the ultimate, last step of degradation for a character, that he actually finds great salvation in it. That was the story I was interested in telling.
And it was a beautiful glimpse inside a marriage.
Right.
How were you able to give us that kind of look inside a marriage?
Well, I wanted to, I don't know, I wanted to tell a very sweet story. I always knew that ultimately what this wanted to be was a very sweet story about a boy in a dress and a girl who loves him. And that was sort of how
There's the tagline.
Yeah.
It's a boy in a dress
and the girl who loves him. That was the story I always was focused on. That was the story I always reminded myself that we were telling, and anything else was ancillary, and everything else was just in support of that story. And so I knew from the get-go that I needed to invest very, very heavily in making the audience, A, believe their romance, B, believe their marriage, and C, root for them, each together and individually. And so I don't know, you know, how these two came to be as characters. That's just sort of the mystery of playwriting, I think. I mean, I've been in a relationship for 8 years, so I know, you know, fighting over money or, you know, I've been through it all.
Lifting each other up.
Yeah, lifting each other up, and sometimes not intentionally tearing each other down and then apologizing for it.
There are some moments of real heart in here, and you let a variety of characters show us their heart, including one with a very controversial name.
I know. It's actually something I'm looking at in the play is whether or not it is too controversial to, if it gets in the way. Because
it can be hurtful.
Right, and I don't know the answer to that, and it may be something that needs to be addressed. And it's funny that you bring that up, because it is something that has been on the checklist of things to ask people about. Well, I mean, the last thing I want to do with this play is offend. And
well, because there is the real kernel of this seems to be the heart of all of the characters that you have there.
The one thought that I had in creating the character name was the idea of ownership of a horrible word. That this person chooses to adopt that as her name, as her drag persona.
And that's
the intention
real.
behind
that's real in that industry.
Right. So it's very, very, very astute that you picked up on that, because that was one of my main questions as to whether or not the character name
gets in the way of what you're doing. What do you think?
I don't know yet. You know, the thing about it is that my responsibility is to be honest to all of my characters.
That's right.
And I think the glib answer would be such a small percentage of the audience would know that that's an offensive word. And then I think that the honest answer is that if any percentage of the audience finds that it's an offensive word, that it's something at the very least to examine. And so, who is this person, and
why did she pick that name?
Why did she pick that name? And is it, if you keep it, does it need to be addressed, and does it need to be folded into the character? And that's one of the joys of getting to work on a play. Is you know, you go and you find out what works, what doesn't, and you find out what audiences respond to, and you find the things that you don't have to ask that people bring up, which is precisely what you just did. Those are the questions that you don't even have to ask are really the best questions to have answered.
So now that you've had both of your readings, both the public track and the industry track, how do you sum it up? How do you sum up this experience, your first time at the...
Oh my God, this has been an amazing experience. You know, I came to it, you know, I've been juggling so much, and I came here admitting freely to my collaborators. I'm like, guys, my head is not in this. I am going to try my best, but I just wasn't. I'm blessed to be busy, and so arriving here, I was like, oh, let's wrap our minds around this. Yes, breathe and wrap your mind around the play, and it has afforded me this beautiful opportunity to sit down with some really great collaborators, some really wonderful actors, and examine it and roll up our sleeves. And everybody, we've worked. I spent a good 2 days rewriting the second half of the play, really trying to snap it into focus, remembering that we are on a hero's journey and a hero's quest, and putting our hero front and center, and with all the self-doubt and all of the courage and the encouragement that a hero story needs to have. And you know, you want to put your characters through hell, but then make sure that they land safely on the other side. So we spent a lot of time working on that, and it's been an invaluable experience.
I know you could tell from the reaction of the audience when I was there just moments ago that you succeeded in that.
I'm grateful to know that, and very happy. I mean, you know, you write plays, you tell stories because I believe that the act of storytelling is, here, I made this for you. You know, even if it's a story not like this, but if it's a story that's a little hard to embrace, if it's maybe a truth that people are resistant to. Right. The ultimate goal, I think, of storytelling is, here, I made this for you, for your enjoyment, for your education, for you to peruse and take home and think about. And so when you have an experience which was so great, where you just said, yeah, I made this for you, what do you think? And the audience goes, yeah, okay, thank you, I'll take that. It's always nice. It's always gratifying.
Well, thanks for coming down right after
It's
your
my
reading.
pleasure.
I know you're going to have some more fun experiences through the rest
Yeah.
of the weekend, and I'm glad we had a chance to talk to you.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Now we meet playwright Marcus Gardley, whose play Black Odyssey also received a strong response. Here's a brief look.
Somebody said you're a deliverer. Somebody said you deliver, God. With all I am, I surrender. Deliver, deliver, oh God.
There's nothing I can do, daughter.
So you've had both of your readings already.
I have.
How's that feel?
It feels great. I'm so elated. The audiences were so warm, so open. I really feel like I heard my play, and that's the greatest gift I think a playwright can get.
Was this the first time you had a chance to hear your play given that kind of treatment?
Absolutely. This is the first time I've heard it, and I did 2 major rewrites in the 2 weeks that I've been here. So it's been invaluable, this experience.
Now I have to say, you were really given the full-on treatment because the cast that you had reading your play was amazing.
Thank you. Thank
Don't you agree?
I totally agree. Superstars, all of them.
They really were.
Yes.
And it was really, for me, not knowing your material before I got here, but knowing a little bit about it, it was musical and rhythmic and inspiring. So how did you react to it?
It was great. You know, our first rehearsal, when they all start reading it, it felt like instruments, like we had gathered in an orchestra, and the melody and the harmony, that just blended so well. So actually all of the music that you heard, all of the vocal arrangements, those actors came up with that themselves.
Those melodies?
Those melodies are all theirs. Yeah, they're amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So what did that feel like I mean, we know that theater is a collaborative art form, but that really is collaborative when you only gave them the words and they came up with the melody.
Absolutely, and they were gung-ho from day one. You know, I felt bad because I had recorded some of the songs, but the recording was bad. And they said, don't worry about it, we'll rehearse, tonight we'll go over it, we'll study the material, and we'll come up with some melodies for you.
They obviously understood where you were coming from,
Absolutely.
what the history you were trying to convey and the hope you were trying to bring.
Absolutely.
It was that handshake, those
Yes.
roads matching up, wasn't
Absolutely. That's the best way to describe it. From day one, it's like, even one actress said she felt like she knew me just by reading my work, so it was definitely like kismet, you know, it's been great.
So let's try to explain what this is without giving away too much.
Sure.
So that our viewers know what they can look forward to, because I have a feeling we're going to see this play again.
I hope so, I have my fingers crossed.
So how do you describe it without giving it all away?
I would say it's, you know, basically it's an adaptation of Homer's Odysseus, Odyssey, the Odyssey, but it is a Afrocentric take, if you will, on the story, and there's a lot of, the journey is through African-American history.
And the current day.
And the current day, so there's a parallel story, there's the present day story and then the historical story.
So there's a lot of magic in this
Absolutely.
way of telling the story.
Absolutely.
And that can be a real cumbersome device to have to deal with as a writer. But I think that you handled that really adeptly. So how
Thank
did you
you.
deal with the magic in this story?
Well, you know, all of my plays deal with magical realism, and so that's one of the things that it's actually, I think it's a blessing and it could be a cursing because sometimes I overdo it.
It's easy to get bogged down in
Exactly.
it, isn't it?
It can be, I can get really, you know, abstract and strange. And so the great thing about adapting the story is I had to follow the structure of the original. So it was sort of like a great lesson, a great education for me by studying the Odyssey and reading Homer's other works. I basically feel like this is an homage to the Odyssey. It's one of my favorite stories. So
What makes it your favorite? One of your favorites?
I love the adventure. I love this idea of a man searching for home, and I love that we get to see what his home is like while he's away, so we know he's coming back to. And then I really wanted to talk about the idea of, without giving too much away, the idea of being raised by a single mother and the complications, the gifts that could bring, but also for a lot of people that it's problematic. And I really want to talk about that. I think it's a really great question. And I also wanted to talk about a soldier, what it's like to be a soldier and to be trying to get home and what's going through your mind. I didn't want to tell the story, stereotypical story of PTSD, soldiers who suffer from that, but I wanted to actually add more conversation to that story about a soldier coming home and being lost and trying to find your way.
I have to say that this really, some of your work, some of your research in writing this really touched me in really important ways. When you mentioned the Scarborough Boys, for example.
Yes.
There was a beautiful Broadway show about that was very controversial.
Absolutely.
So for you to even touch on it in the way that you did must have felt like you were raising the stakes a little bit higher risk.
Definitely.
So what was it like for you to find all those references to tie it in to helping us learn the story of our country?
Absolutely.
Through an African-American lens? What was that like?
That's such a great question. You know, they came to me. It's really strange. And actually, while I was here, I had the Scottsboro Boys and Emmett Till. All of that came to me while I was here.
While you were here
While I
working
was
on the
here,
play?
I had not intended to do that at all.
That wasn't there before?
Not at all. In fact, the whole history thread, we discovered together with the cast and the director while I was here. This play, this draft that you saw is almost a whole new play that I've discovered while I was being here. It's just something about being here and the peace and the quiet and the elevation. It just kind of opened me up and opened everybody up, and you know, it was a powerful experience.
I mean, you're not a new writer.
No, no.
But you will be new to us. What is it like for you to come into this environment? You just described the peacefulness, but it's also this beautiful bubble that the Denver Center Theater Company creates for the writers.
Yes.
Many festivals say that they're about the playwrights, but I think that from what I understand from all of you, it really is about you and your work. What is that like for you as an artist?
It's the greatest gift. You know, when they commissioned me, first of all, they told me, well, what do you want to write? Usually when you get commissioned by a theater, they say, okay, we want you to explore this. And first of all, they said, and they also asked me to write big. No one's asked me that, because that's what I do, right? You know, epic plays. Oh, big, think big, bigger. And they gave me time and space. So a lot of theaters, you know, they kind of nudge you constantly, and they nudge, but they give you a gentle nudge at the Denver Theater Center. And I've come to the Playwright Summit, this is my 4th time, so I love it. And so I kind of knew what to expect, you know, they really want me to come to get a sense of what it's like to be here in the festival. And it's just really open. I really feel like the playwrights are at the center of it. You have full say in the casting and your director and your dramaturg, and they're really just there to support you. It's really amazing.
It's funny they told you to write big, because you certainly did write big.
Exactly.
And of course, hitting that mark, writing big, it's always easier to overshoot and then try to manage the story. So what did you get out of hearing these readings and this incubator period to try to manage the story? I know you added all that beautiful, beautiful moving history to the play.
Yes.
What else did you get out of it?
You know, that's a really great question. I think the most important thing I got out of this, the readings, was I started to understand the rhythm of the play. So there's tragedy, and then there's the music, and then there's comedy, then there's history. And so there's a really beautiful rhythm that you just go through this range of emotions, you know, and that wasn't on purpose. So that was a really great discovery for me. So I'm gonna, in my next pass through the script, I'm gonna really pay close attention to that.
So if they do select your play,
yes,
to bring it to audiences here in Colorado, what's the message of this play, of this telling of the Odyssey as the Black Odyssey?
I think the most important message that I would say is, for home is really a sense of, it is really, you know, people say home is within you, it's in your heart. I really believe that. And I think we make our homes. You know, sometimes if you don't have a family for whatever reason, you can make your own family, or through friends. What's so great about this project and being here is the cast became my family, you know, in a lot of kind of a beautiful way. We just gathered together. And so I think home and family doesn't have to be the traditional sense. It can be, you can make it yourself. And so if you feel like you're lost in the world or depressed or sad, it's about making new home, making a new family. That's the big message for me.
I have to say that I often predict which plays that they will do, and I think that even though the weekend isn't over yet, your play has made such an impression that you must have a good sense that you might get to come back, and I hope you do.
Thank you so much. I do too. It would be an honor. This has been such a great time being here, and thank you so much for interviewing me. I really appreciate it.
Details on the selections from the Colorado New Play Summit will be available at their webpage, denvercenter.org, including the final selection from last year's summit, Sense and Sensibility, the musical. The Denver Film Society is partnering with Fashion Denver for a very special fundraising event. Here's a preview of a conversation with Edith Head, starring Susan Claassen.
Edith Head was undoubtedly Hollywood's most famous costume designer. She won an unprecedented 8 Academy Awards, worked on 1,131 films in a career that spanned 6 decades, and when she died, the world thought she would be lost forever. Now, Susan Claassen, in a critically acclaimed tour de force performance, brings the diva of design back to life in this behind-the-scenes feast of great movie lore and delicious stories.
When I was at Paramount, I worked 6 days a week, 15 hours a day for 44 years. That adds up to... I was never very good at math. Let's just say I learned to do everything, and if you don't do everything in Hollywood, you are not Hollywood. People say to me, Edith, what makes you different from other designers? I tell them I'm not different. I'm just the best. I hate modesty, don't you? When I first met Betty, I had been working already 20 years in the business. She came in like a small whirlwind. There was no polite chit-chat. She was a busy woman, I was a busy woman, and we both knew it was a nice day.
This special evening supports the Women Plus Film Festival at the Denver Film Society. It's being held at the L2 Art Center right next door to the C Film Center on Colfax. All the details are available on their webpage, denverfilm.org. In the coming weeks, we'll have more playwright interviews from the Colorado New Play Summit and a special interview with Susan Claassen from A Conversation with Edith Head.
That's all for this edition. Remember to join us on Facebook and Twitter. With all that Colorado has to offer, we're here to help you keep it in focus. Thanks for watching. Good night.